Back when I was little, I remember running Windows 95. In fact, I ran it to the point where we ran it on an old 486 tower, and we ran it to the point where whenever I was on AOL Instant Messenger, and I'm not kidding about this, it would take at least 5 to 10 minutes to send a single message. As a result, many of the people I talked to thought I'd disappeared or I was ignoring them. But I do remember the days of Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows Millennium. Don't even get me started about Windows Millennium. My brother had a compact Presario tower that basically belonged to the family, but then he kind of took it over. And because there was no antivirus on the system, let's just put it this way, it took a good solid 30 minutes for the thing to boot, and I don't even want to know what was wrong with that thing. But like most people, I'm sure that a lot of people probably ended up using Windows. I used it all the way to the days of Windows XP. I remember Windows XP quite well, actually, and to be honest, never had really any problems with it. But like most people, the general consumers who weren't willing to spend $1,000, $2,000 on a computer, Windows was pretty much your only option. Then in high school, I needed to get some work done for my graphics class, and as a result, I ended up getting my first Mac. But I was primarily using it for school-related stuff. We still had all of our Windows boxes. And then along came Windows Vista. Vista, if you ask me, is an acronym. It stands for Very Inept, Stupid, Taintable Abomination. That's how bad Vista was. And I'll give you an example. For those of you who do not know, if you take a look on Google for Sony VAIO, V-A-I-O, Uniform X-Ray, UX 280p, what you will find is my little UMPC. I wanted to keep up to date with all the access technology out there, and I felt that Windows Vista was a good way to do it. So I put Windows Vista onto this tiny little computer. I got the computer because of Vista. The computer was eligible for a free upgrade to Vista. So I went ahead and put Vista on there. Big mistake. Vista itself ran fine, but when I tried to put the piece of assistive technology that I wanted to test on there, it didn't just crash. What essentially must have happened was the whole bootloader, which is in layman's terms the thing that tells the operating system, hey, we exist, this is your hardware talking, give us access and we'll set everything up kind of thing. That was gone. And I had to take it down to the local Sony store to get it re-imaged back to XP. And the salesman said to us very clearly, don't go to Vista. Don't go to Vista. Right about that same time, right in between Windows Vista and Windows 7, one of my relatives actually told me about this. This is Ubuntu version 7.04, Feisty Fawn. It is an operating system that is based on the GNU+Linux environment, the kernel Linux. And it is a very, very nice operating system. Keep in mind, this was version 7.04. For those of you who do not know, what that means is it was released in April of 2007. What that essentially translated into, and keep in mind this was 7 years ago, I couldn't use it for fear of incompatibility with things like my printer, for instance. There just weren't enough free drivers going around. 7 years later, though, GNU+Linux has really taken a turn in the general consumer space. How do I arrive at this conclusion? Well, let's just take a look. It's not necessarily in the desktop space that Windows has dominated in for so long, but it was in the mobile space. Android is a GNU/Linux based operating system, and these days, if you don't want an iPhone, and don't even get me started about BlackBerry, they're pretty much dead in the water. What do you have? You know, it used to be you had an environment called Windows Mobile, which was highly based on XP. In fact, it had the very same start flag logo for Pocket PC 2003, and then as it moved on to Windows Mobile 6, it basically took on the appearance of Windows Vista. But back then, before the iPhone took off and introduced the smartphone to the general consumer, Windows Mobile and BlackBerry and whatnot were your options. Now, while the smartphone was introduced to the general consumer by Apple, because of the high price of entry, a lot of people, yes, they were willing to fork over the money, but I think that was due to the hype. Not everybody is able to afford a $500, $600 device, and at the time, the original iPhone was not on subsidy like it is now. HTC had developed in partnership with Google the T-Mobile G1, which really kicked off, I think, a more versatile way of mobile computing. And to this day, Android has become a major player. Now, let me make this very clear. I'm not going off on a tangent and comparing iOS to Android. What I'm doing is I'm looking at how the general consumer computer space has been altered thanks to Android and thanks to GNU/Linux in comparison to the prior dominance of Microsoft Windows. Android, like I said, it's pretty much on all of our devices. I myself have a Galaxy Note 2 for a smartphone. My uncle has a Galaxy Tab 10.1 2014 edition. And like I said, if it does not run iOS and you want something on a budget, chances are it'll run Android. And Android is based on GNU/Linux. And mobile web browsing in particular has really taken off. And I think that within the next couple of years, Microsoft Windows, if it hasn't already, will have completely lost all relevance to the general consumer. Let me make that very clear. Again, the general consumer. Microsoft will always be strong in the enterprise. That's their bread and butter, and I think that's where they need to stay. But I think that in terms of the general consumer space, we are seeing a serious shift away from Windows. The Macintosh is being picked up, but more and more, I think we're seeing GNU/Linux take over, and that is thanks to Android. But what are your thoughts? Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.